Reflect, don't revisit. So today is such a beautiful day, and I actually am re-recording this because I recorded it and then my headphones were in and the audio was muffled and all this stuff, but I reflected on what happened, but I'm not going to revisit it. So I guess God wanted to teach me how to do that and put me to the test of the exact word that he gave me to speak. But anyways, today we're going to be doing reflect, don't revisit. And I got this message and I just really wanted to share it because I think it's just such a good thing to understand. And once you understand this, you can let go of a lot of situations that are not going to serve you any longer. And you can let go of a lot of things that you feel like have been keeping you in anxiety and bondage and stress for such a long time. So I'm going to give you 3 main points to take away. So my first point would be reflect on the good that has happened in your past, but don't wish to go back there because you're telling God you don't believe he has better for you. So often I think about my childhood and I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss those days. Like there was no struggle. We didn't have to do math or anything. Like it was just a great time. We just had a great day. And I remember the days used to be so beautiful. The grass was greener. Like it wasn't as violent. But now all of a sudden there's this big change happening in our society, right? And I always find myself saying, I wish I could go back there. But that isn't the right terminology that we should be using. We should be saying, those times were great, but better times are coming. And actually, when we do look back on days like that and we wish to be back there, we are telling God, like, I don't believe in what you say you're going to do. I don't believe that you have better for me. I don't believe that victory lies on the other side of the tunnel. I don't believe that, and I want to go back to the other days. And the Bible actually talks about how it's unwise to say that. Why were our former days better than these days? Because in Ecclesiastes, it talks about how there's a time for everything, and there's a time for joy and mourning, and there's a time for death and birth. And so there's a time for everything underneath the sun. And we have to realize that we're going to go through hard times, but prepare because the good times are coming. And we're going to go through good times and prepare because hard times are coming. So there's a time for everything. We can't always be in a good season, especially not being disciples of Christ who carry their cross daily. So it is unwise for us to say, I wish I can go back to my past, and I wish, you can reflect on those days, but don't revisit it. Don't wish to go back there. Because I was just thinking about that and I was like, I wish I can go back to my elementary school days. But in elementary school, I had a horrible attitude. I had burning anger. Like I didn't know who Christ was. And so for me to say that I wish I can go back there just because the days seemed better, I was living in sin in those days. So the days didn't seem better. And that was literally me openly mocking God and telling God, like, I wish I could go back to living in sin and not knowing you. I didn't know God. And the best thing that's ever happened to me was knowing God. And I had to leave that environment and leave that place in which I thought was good in order to get into a better place. And yes, I'm going through things, and yes, I'm carrying my cross daily, but I'm doing it with a helper on my side. So there's a difference. So you can think about the things of the past, but don't try to sit there, right? Don't sit in that. Understand that you can think about it, but don't wish to go back. So the second point we have is the problem isn't thinking about former things, but it's dwelling on them. And what has happened, so do not get stuck there. So that kind of ties into my first point. The problem isn't that you're remembering that. That's a human thing. We're going to remember the things that happened in our past. We're going to remember the past people and the past situations, the past events and memories. So the problem isn't that you're thinking about it, but the problem is that you're sitting in those thoughts and you're dwelling on them. And to dwell means you're allowing that to take over your whole entire body. You're allowing your body in the present you're allowing your mind in the present to be put in your mind in the past. It's like basically taking your whole new self and going backwards. And I always hear this thing and it says, don't ever go back to what God has delivered you from. So if God has delivered you from something, it's the biggest slap in the face for you to go back into the exact same thing God delivered you from. You don't need closure. You don't need to go back to an end. And that's something that the devil will always try to do. The devil will always try to tell us, go get closure. You need closure, right? And the way you can discern whether it's God or whether it's the devil is based on the way God talks to you. So with me, God always talks to me in a whisper. God is always really, really kind. God is always very parental and everything like that. But with the devil, the devil is so flattering, and it's God always tells me this is what's going to happen. He also warns me about the other side of it, right? And what could happen if I don't do what he says, right? But the devil will always flatter you. Like, he will always make you feel like, oh, just do this, and the devil always brings things with gratification to the flesh. He always says things that would gratify your flesh. It doesn't really hit with the spirit. So if the Holy Spirit isn't in it, and most likely it's not God talking to you. So we shouldn't dwell in our past, because those things have already happened. And usually when we dwell in our past, we're dwelling on embarrassing moments. I know we've all had those times where, we sit down and we're like, oh, remember when that embarrassing thing happened? And we're just like, and now we start thinking about a rope of embarrassing things that's happened in our lives. We should not be doing that at all, okay? Embarrassing moments happen to everybody. And 9 times out of 10, these embarrassing moments aren't actually embarrassing. You're just making them more embarrassing than they are. 9 times out of 10, people didn't actually see you trip and fall. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't matter if they did. So when we dwell in the past, we bring ourselves back there. What's the point? You're giving yourself unnecessary stress, unnecessary anxiety over nothing. What happened. And a lot of us have to have that it is what it is mindset, because it really is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to change it. You might as well move forward. And if God delivered you from it, why are you afraid of it? Why are you afraid of people God delivered you from? Why are you afraid to hold your head up high when you see people from your past? I caught myself in that. I saw a girl from my past who used to bully me and belittle me, right? And now I'm this new person, and I'm confident, and I'm walking godly boldness. And I'm just I caught myself putting my head down while I was walking by her, not trying to make eye contact. And I'm like, do I know who I am? Do I know whose child I am? I should not even be acting this way. God has delivered me. God has done so much for me. There's no reason why I should bow my head in the sight of my enemies. No, I'm a king's kid. I shouldn't be doing that. So remember, let's not dwell on the things of the past. We've been delivered from it, and whatever happened, happened. It isn't you anymore. You're not the same that you were yesterday, let alone the same you were 15 years ago. Hopefully you're not, because with God, everything has to change. With God, he's always going to bring about good change in your life. You can't experience Jesus Christ and still stay the same as you were. You can't. So there will be change. So just remember that it is what it is. Nobody can throw anything in your face that God has already thrown in the sea of forgetfulness. If God told you to let go of it, if God let go of it, if God forgave you for it, there's nothing anybody can throw in your face, okay? And the last thing is, remember that the devil gets a foothold with just one thought. So this is how the devil works. It just takes one thought. It just takes one word. It just takes one powerful word from the tongue. It just takes one movement. It just takes one action, one text, one call, one email for the devil to get you back in that place that God delivered you from. Okay, at the end of the day, we have freedom of will, and God can get us out of something. And because we're humans and we're messy, we can get ourselves right back into it. Okay? Take every thought captive that comes against the perfect will of God. So if there's any thought that comes up into your mind that's contradictory to what God says, because God cannot be mocked. So if there's anything that's contradictory to what God said, you need to make sure you're taking it captive. And to me, taking every thought captive looks like praying against it right away. When a demonic thought comes in my mind, when a lustful thought comes in my mind, when a greedy thought comes in my mind, when an evil, jealous thought comes in my mind, I take it captive immediately, because you have no place in my mind. I have a living God inside of me, and you have no place in my mind. The minute we dwell on those thoughts, the minute we let those thoughts simmer in our minds, the devil now has a foundation in our minds. He's fighting for our minds right now, especially if you're chosen, because many are called and few are chosen. The devil's fighting for a place in your mind right now. He's fighting to get foothold in your mind, and that won't prevail in Jesus' name. So Jesus says, whatever you ask to my Father in my name, it shall be done for you. If you do not doubt, be double-minded, or waver in your faith. So we need to be openly fighting against the devil and all his schemes. He will not win. He will never win. And God has always got the victory. God gets the victory before battles are even established. So remember who your Father is and take it to him right away. There is nothing that you can ask God to do for you that he won't do for you. There's no mistake you have made, no past problem that has been there that's trying to come back up that will ever prevail.